And the discussion today is an issue that is no longer environment, but something that's deeply economic. Climate change is already affecting Sri Lanka, as all of us know, through extreme weather events, which is threatening our food systems, our energy security, and causing immense infrastructure vulnerability to us. For businesses and policymakers alike, the question is no longer if, but how climate change will shape our economic future. At the same time, climate actions are also presenting opportunity, from green finance and renewable energy to sustainable supply chains and climate-smart innovation. So the panel today is about exploring the costs of climate change, how businesses are preparing for it, and what Sri Lanka is doing to turn risk into opportunity. So I'll start with Dr. Ananda. Dr. Ananda, what are the most immediate economic risks Sri Lanka faces due to climate change?
Thanks. I think it's a good starting point. At the same time, I echo what you just said. Climate change is here. So it is already in our calculations and decision-making processes. And it is big part of the ESG agenda. And it is big part of the sustainable financing, or we call it blended financing. So what are the key areas that I would probably, in front of a business community, I would put it in 2-3 simple areas. One is the supply chains. How the climate change is impacting the supply chains. Because if the chain doesn't work, supply may come from globally or locally. It might get connected to the energy systems or agriculture systems or any other production systems, or the human capital. If a family member, because we see a lot of impacts from disasters as well as unforeseen areas like the heat, the temperature rises. Now there was a study by Cambridge lately. People living in high rises, when you come home, your parents are a little abnormal and agitated because at an elevated temperature, some of the non-communicable diseases your drugs are not working anymore. And then there are other unforeseen things like cancer and many other things impacting the families and the workforce due to behavioral changes, behavioral habits like, these antibiotic resistance bacteria. There are many things emerging. What I'm trying to say is not only the supply chains and the marketing aspects, there are many things that we need to be mindful and take precautions. And the other side is, the big challenge we are having is, we have a lot of enthusiasm in the global community on climate resilience, mitigation, adaptation. So our markets have changed totally. Our clientele is more climate savvy and they are asking for product now. For example, EU. EU Green Challenge requires for us to put in the label the amount of renewable energy in the product. And the upcoming regulations 2027 EUDR, that is connected to the products to the deforestation. So you have to tell that your product has nothing to do with deforestation. So these are very tight certifications, and also tag the product with the location. If the location is polluted, say now in Sri Lanka we take Kalan Rio Basin, we have 3 export zones. If the water quality in Kalan Rio Basin is below certain accepted norms, your product is not eligible for GSP+. Or you don't get the full incentive, but less. So I think to sum it up, now we are in a different paradigm, different markets, and vulnerable supply chains. So we need to be mindful and we need to take action. So it's just beyond the normal floods, drought, landslides, and things that we used to talk much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ananda. So you're talking about requiring transparency in climate risk and also adaptability. So just going to Denver, From a technology and digital transformation, because data seems to be key for transparency, how has data and innovation helped Sri Lanka better predict, manage, and mitigate climate risks?
Thank you, Tamani. I think let me begin with some of the critical factors. If you look at the planet from space, it's void of geographical or political boundaries. And so is digital. Knowledge is today democratized. It's available. In that context, the demand, as Ananda mentioned, is for the transparency and accountability and responsibility. And that brings about governance. Plus, what is most important is, as the topic says, the cost of climate change is already in your balance sheets. It's just not being called out. The cost of insurance, the cost of risk, the cost of reliability, the cost of opportunity, the cost of non-functionality, a breakdown in the supply chains, these are not measured. It's just taken as it is what it is. But in a digital world where we have access to this information, where we can create the data lakes and the data mining to bring about this visibility of real-time business intelligence for strategic decision making as and when events unfold will be the key at a boardroom level discussion about making your investments. The next piece is that with intelligence and AI comes governance. And intelligence and information without governance is noise. It's not accountable, it can mislead you. So the need for governance and the need to merge your values and accountability and traceability into this becomes a critical factor for your success. So from Sri Lanka's point of view, point number one is that we are not alone for the impacts of climate change in other regions. It affects, as Ananda said, our entire value chain, not only the supply chain, investors and everyone else. Two is how do we build the resilience to be able to mitigate this with knowledge and wisdom from the data and the information that is already available. And the governance structures to align our business to use those as an opportunity and a challenge to make us ahead of the curve. So I think I would leave it with that.
Thank you, then. I'll now go to someone in the real sector, and Susantha, being in the energy sector, which has tremendous pressure to transition, and also with Sri Lanka aiming to generate 70% of its energy from renewable energy by 2030. What are the transition risks your company faces, and what are your plans for sustainable growth?
Thank you very much. I think I may be the most vulnerable man compared to these two gentlemen because they are talking about the how the effectiveness of the climate change. But I may be the contributor for that, me representing the oil companies in Sri Lanka. Actually, if I really start by saying this, if we take the energy, and there are two different sectors, renewable energy and non-renewable energy. So at the moment I am representing the non-renewable energy, which is the fossil fuel-based company. But as she mentioned, just 2030, and we are hoping to have 70% of renewable energy to the country. And utilization not only for Sri Lanka, it's actually trying to contribute in the entire world. So the people are very eager to get into renewable energy, at least 70%. So we cannot say no to it. One side, the energy transition is happening very fast at the moment in the rest of the world. Sri Lanka, I will talk about it later. But as these two gentlemen mentioned, the digitalization and the energy side from that end is much faster than we think. Even it is faster than our life. So that much is going and happening. So now come back to Sri Lanka on this particular case that about our companies and in the fossil fuel-based energy sector, I would say, has a risk, yes, definitely going forward in the business arena. But it is very slow at the moment. Now, at the moment, I mean, for Sri Lanka, the EV-based vehicles, electronic vehicles, started coming in 2025. In 2025, it's about 6,400 EVs came in. But before that, we had the hybrid vehicles and also plug-in hybrid vehicles. So with this contribution, at the moment, the energy utilization from the fossil-based vehicles or the normal combustion engine is reduced around I would say 2 to 3%, because it's not that contributing compared to the entire the vehicle population in the country. So still we have a little bit of space going forward in this particular business, but we also have to take a lot of measures in taking into account the challenge that we are going to face. But according to the expectations, by 2030, it's around 10% of the vehicle population is going to be EVs. So that means the 90% still remain with the fossil fuel by 2030. So it's about another 4 years down the line. So the business sense is still, we have something to work with, but there is a little bit of challenge on that. The reason is the fuel demand is slowly going down. So the problem that we are going to face is survival of those investors who have invested on fossil-based fuel companies, especially we have 4 operators here in Sri Lanka distributing fuel. We are into downstream. I mean, in fuel industry, there are 3 streams, that is upstreams, middle stream, and downstream. Upstreams mean that, you are looking for fuel or excavation of fuel. At the moment, it's not yet successful in Sri Lanka. And the downstream is we have one refinery refining the fuel. And the third stream is the distribution of fuel to the ordinary public. So that we have 4 people playing in Sri Lanka. So we also have to take into account that what kind of a challenge if the vehicle fleet in the Sri Lankan market is replaced with entire electronic vehicles. But there is a certain element of, you will not be able to replace the entire, fuel requirements in the country 100%. The reason is there are certain limitations in that respect the EV can do. But as it is projected, 70% energy market is going to come, renewable energy market is going to come. So we have to take a lot of risk in that. Especially in the investment part of it, like, we all know, we all are CEOs in this room right now, and we all are looking at ROI, return on investment. So we will have a challenge how to account on that if the fuel market, goes down and then renewable energy comes in. But we as a private sector fuel company, we are looking at that aspect as well to face the challenge. So we are going into renewable energy as well. So we will be replacing certain things or implementing certain things for cars who need charging in the charging station, not only fuel supply, but also electrical charges as well. So likewise, the energy companies also have to think positively how they can come back on that or come back on the investment, return on investment. So that is how it's need to be looked at. Now, when you talk about the renewable energy, that we know that currently in Sri Lanka is solar power as well as wind power. But then hydrogen power also going to come now. So we need to look at that. How do we, energize the vehicles with hydrogen power as well? So likewise, we are working on that. And there are so many challenges that currently the fuel operating companies are taking. I think I stop from there and to take the next question. Thank you.
Thank you, Susantha. Just to get a different perspective as well for Denver, from a tech company perspective, working with so many different industries, how are you integrating ESG into your strategy?
So from a tech company perspective, tech and digital cuts across every single industry, including fossil fuel, right? And it's about the transition where I would say sustainability has evolved from compliance to capital discipline. It's now a part of enterprise risk architecture. So it's no longer just reporting numbers and getting a compliance. It's actually becoming investors are pricing themselves and measuring your value in terms of your responsible business practices. We're having sustainability now influencing capital decisions, investments. Virtusa today, part of Virtusa is a part of EQT, which is a private equity, one of the largest in the world, and their emphasis on ensuring all portfolio companies are compliant is no longer an option, but is a must-do with very, very specific targets of achievement. And these targets are given to the CEOs and to the boards that manage them. So the shift is from annual disclosures to continuous risk intelligence that the investors are able to manage in that sense. So the risks of not reporting is far greater than the risks of reporting and making corrective action. So this, I think, brings us to the point that responsible sustainability protects enterprise value. So when you look at your enterprise value and someone is trying to invest, and this goes to the SMEs we were speaking about earlier and the small scales, it's about giving them that confidence that start your business on the right values, the right policies, and then build a business around it. We create a business and then try to build in the values, right? Do it the other way. What is your purpose? What is your objective? And this is the message I think we as CEOs and those who are present here need to take it down to our supply chain. What are your values? Are you aligned with us? There is a problem. Are you contributing to the problem or are you contributing to the solution? How is your business helping? And asking these simple questions, right? These are not difficult ones. And transparency lowers the cost of capital. Real-time intelligence protects it. So I think I've sort of summed that up from a corporate digital point of view about accountability and responsibility being unerasable in the digital world.
Thank you, Dharma. So a lot of this requires financing, transition, changing your strategy. So Dr. Ananda, from a Sri Lanka perspective, what are the steps that have been taken to mobilize climate funding and attract sustainable investment from a policy perspective?
I think the question is like, okay, how Sri Lanka is positioning and how good we have positioned so far and what we can do to improve. I think in that context, this whole financing is based on number of global conventions. One is that everybody knows the Paris Agreement that require emissions to come down, and also the vulnerable people and the property to be taken care of. And then there's another connected convention called Global Biodiversity Framework that says, pay attention to the ecosystems because ecosystem services are the inputs to the business and also to the sustainability. And then on top of that, there's another framework called Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction. And there are a few others, but all these things are providing the base for sustainable financing, or we call it blended financing. I think they not touched on the risk. And this, where Sri Lanka is today, is Sri Lanka has done all the book work. The green finance strategy, the NDC 3.0, highlighting 5 mitigation sectors, 9 adaptation sectors, and the need to reach to the loss and damage fund and all that. So we have done all that, and we have the net zero agenda in place. And then at the same time, the banks went and introduced a lot of bonds, green bonds, blue bonds. Now the question is, we are kind of like at a freezing position, because now the money mobilized through the bonds are as cost as the normal commercial loans. So there's no advantage for anyone to go and do green work with that money. Now we need a transformational change that I will latch on to what then was stopped. We need the de-risking mechanisms to access the global real low concessional blended finance. And there are several elements associated with that effort. The first effort is the transparency. Transparency always comes with information and your predictions and the modeling and everything. So in order to do that, we need to have the minimum information set in the Sri Lanka. Maybe it's in air quality, water quality, biodiversity, any other social norms and all that. And the ability to do the modeling. Now, I know our scientists are working with number of US universities, doing a lot of modeling and all that. That all has to come to this de-risking environment. So once that happens, and the information and the databases and all that is available, there are many initiatives ongoing right now, but we need to integrate all that. Now, for example, Gates Foundation is supporting 9 ministries to digitize information called Integrated Digital Agriculture Transformation Project. And then the Department of Agriculture has another project called CropX. Likewise, there are many initiatives, but how does the corporates get this information and make the cost of capital to come down? I think that's where the crux of the matter is. And how an investor is guaranteed that we will tell you exactly how we used your money. If there is a third-party verifier that investor hired to come to Sri Lanka and report back, whether that person has the basic information readily available, you don't have even to come. I think we heard that US presentation, the commercial attaché presented that all that is there and all 50 states are online. So you could go and reach that data. Now we need to come to that level and then open up the mechanisms and our transparency and our competitiveness. The moment that happens, we can access the philanthropic capitals and others. So the blended financing mix, where our bankers already are in a good way to mobilize the green bonds and blue bonds, will have inputs coming at a low cost, so the overall cost will go down. So I think that's where most of the things, so I will stop saying that there's a wonderful base the government of Sri Lanka has done, thing called a national physical plan, where the industry should be located, how you should avoid disasters, what are the environmental sensitive areas. I don't know how, it's not, unfortunately, it's not in the main circulation or in the use. So it was done by the National Physical Planning Department called National Physical Planning Policy 2048. I would really encourage you, if you haven't prepared it, do it, because that will provide a lot of insight into the type of business and where to go in Sri Lanka. I think that's probably where we are today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ananda. If I switch gear a bit and go to Susantha, as a multinational energy company, are there any actions that you're taking to support Sri Lanka's climate goals beyond regulatory compliance?
Yes. Yes, you are right. And we are actually taking a lot of actions to create, energy support and also the climate change, and especially doing this energy transmission. I would say like this, see, the first thing is, any one of us is expecting is quality fuel. That is something that we are actually wanted to prove it. We need to bring the quality fuel to the country and give the quality fuel to the vehicle owners, everybody. If I look at it, the big challenge that we are facing currently is all the new cars, new vehicles coming in. Near the fuel pump, it is mentioned, okay, this need to be pumped 95 octane. So we can't put 92 or less, or 95 less. It says super diesel or 10 ppm. So we have now no choice but to bring the best fuel to the country. So that is something that we are being pushed to, support the energy transmission and also the climate change in the country. So when we talk about 95, is octane is now the well accepted octane petrol quality. I mean, if you can put 95, that's the best that I can say. But at the same time, we are having a challenge here in the country, whether we are supplying, especially not only on petrol, but also on diesel quality. If we don't supply the proper diesel quality to the vehicles, even if they are willing to put 10 ppm or 500 ppm, we have two types of diesel qualities here. Normal auto diesel is 500 ppm, but the super diesel is for the vehicles that are being recommended, super diesel. But 500 ppm is used only in few countries in the world. I mean, actually the normal auto diesel quality should be between 15 ppm to 50 ppm, but we are still bringing 500 ppm. So this is something that we are having a serious challenge, and I have been addressing this into the necessary authorities that need to be changed, because we have to bring the quality fuel into the country. Then that will help the country's pollution environment and reducing the emission and all that to give the better climate, help in the climate change. So this is something that currently we are facing on the quality fuel requirement. In addition to that, we are also developing the other aspect of the quality life of the people. When we really start distributing fuel, we have to give a quality service to all the end consumers who come to pump the fuel stations. So this is something that we are energizing, and by doing that, also the controlling emissions and evaporations and so on, things like that, which is releasing from the fuel stations into the air. So that if we are responsible to take all the controls over this fossil fuel, which is really damaging the atmosphere. So we take a lot of actions in that respect. And I would say that we are responsible by selling this fossil fuel into the air or into the people. And then it is, I mean, we can see how much of fuel that is being burned for a day. It's not only the oil companies are responsible, but also, as we all know about the controlling governance and so on, things like that, we can see how much of traffic on the road. So we can see how much of fuel being burnt, and then the smoke is released to the environment. So pollution is happening day by day. So there are a lot of things that need to be taken place in the same time, by not only by the fuel companies, but also the entire administrations. Then it comes to the national planning, which we need to be addressed, as he pointed out. So I think I'll stop from there. I'm sure that there will be questions on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Susantha. Then we're just coming back to you. As a tech company, do you see climate-driven innovation as a potential growth sector for the tech industry in Sri Lanka?
For sure, 100%. And let me take it by example. Sri Lanka as a country experienced Cyclone Zylva. And we have some of the banks and insurance companies, CEOs and bosses here. How would you have liked to have been having the information that you already have in your bank, real-time intelligence of telling you who are your customers who are impacted, how many would ask for a moratorium, how many of your customers not in the impact area but have supply chains in the impacted areas that are having to deal with it, and how would you manage your capital flow, your cash flows, and your predictability real time? That's a technology opportunity. And that's just one example, and there are many others. So the need for us to be able to develop technology to support our own selves plus to global markets is immense. It's infinite, I would say, the opportunity. But with this comes, if Sri Lanka is to position itself as SLASCOM projects as a green IT BPM destination of choice, digital equals energy. Reliable, clean, affordable energy access, power purchase agreements, renewable energy access, and these are things. And if we really want to position Sri Lanka, we need to bring one of the big data center operators here. That's the change. If we don't give that experiment or that opportunity of investing in large-scale projects, a large data center would probably consume Kerala in its entirety. That's the scale. Sri Lanka has 10x of our renewable energy than what we need. That's what we have to mine, that's what we have to bring, and that's the opportunity we have.
Thank you, Denver. So Dr. Ananda, on a policy perspective, how can you collaborate more effectively with private sector to accelerate climate resilience?
I think there are a number of ways that we can improve our resilience. One is, I think I went at length on the de-risking of finance. And then the second area is public sector and private sector working together to make this whole transparent data sharing ecosystem in place in the country. And I think a colleague mentioned about the national planning. Our national planning needs to be at a very high level in developing what-if scenarios. Now, for example, I can take, I think Tena mentioned about this renewable energy. Now we have, thanks to USAID, we got the first wind map in 2002, I believe. And then the Sri Lanka grid connection feasibility again in 2003. So that was the thinking at that time to connect the grid to India. The idea is there was a shift in the peak. So the moment you connect, you can take out the peak. The barge sitting on the harbor at that time, 200 megawatts, can be shut down. Now we are on a different paradigm. Now we just mentioned about the green ammonia and green hydrogen. Now we are in a very good position to use our renewable energy, develop it, and find either the high-used industries or high-used parts like the EV transition or cement or any other thing, or convert into product that can be exportable. I remember a year ago in Brisbane, Australia is retrofitting everything to export green ammonia to Singapore side. So now we have situations very similar, having wind and solar. Now I think the question was on the policy. Now how do you take that and do a good what-if scenario calculation? What are the pluses and minuses of connecting or not connecting, going to the green hydrogen and green ammonia pathway, or bringing another what type of industries, or making the EV? What is the policy environment required to build pump storage in Sri Lanka using our reservoirs immediately, so that we don't have to bring battery storage or mix the battery storage, optimize? So these require in-depth policies supported by evidence-based. So what is lacking is the research culture, because we have good set of university professors, but their knowledge, they are not collaborating in between sectors. That is another challenge that we have in policy integration. Because policy integration cannot be done through these single lenses, energy, transport, health. You cannot do that anymore. So that integration, somewhere we need to work together. It requires the corporates, the government, researchers, and also extensive collaborations with the international community. Now I have been walking Singapore National University corridors. That has been my favorite things, because every professor's outside the door there is a poster. If you look at that poster, they are collaborating with the best in the world, be it the health, be it ag engineering, be it something else. Now we need that kind of culture here, not the, so supervisor and the student papers get published in SLAs at the end of the year. This is unneeded, but the next step of collaborative papers and things like that. I think if we can get that ecosystem going, and what then I mentioned about the digitalization and the strengths that we can have, I think we can go a long way, and Sri Lanka's biodiversity richness and the positioning and everything is in our favor. And also we have been geopolitically fairly balanced also. So that the right policy environment, consistent policies, foreign policies, industrial policies, and the others, I think we can go a long way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Ananda. And I think I'll pose my final question before we go to the questions from the audience. Susantha, just to wrap it up, in your perspective, sitting in the energy industry, what is the realistic and economically viable energy transition phase of Sri Lanka?
Yeah, I think as we all discussed, we have no choice. We have to go for the energy transmission. But what I see is, there are so many factors that need inputs, as Dr. Ananda pointed out, from the policy point of view, the government point of view, the regulatory point of view, and also the more importantly, all the business that are, whether it is using the fossil fuel or the renewable energy, they need to be considered as the receiving the adequate return on investment. Otherwise, the companies cannot survive. So the policies have to be made, the framework has to happen that all the companies receive adequate return on investment for them to adopt all the changes in the energy transmission. Otherwise, it's difficult. Say, for example, if someone want to, change or buy a EV car, so you need capital for that. Likewise, when you are changing it, into the support, like say, for example, if you want to put a solar panel on your roof, you need to invest. And the other part of is whether, if all the roof in the country is wanted to put the, solar panels, can our electricity department or electricity board can receive that, or whether the grid is adequately supported to receive all the energy, energy comes from the solar power. So that's where the national planning comes into the picture. So we need to look at the holistic picture and see how this energy transmission that can take place practically applicable or implemented. So this is something that I see there is a vacuum in there, because we have seen some experience on that as well, because there are a lot of electricity now generated from the solar power, and they are waiting to get the connections to the grid or something like that. On the other side, there should be something else also looking at it. So if we can't off-grid or on-grid, so if it is on-grid, so we are connecting to the national grid in the country. If it is off-grid, we have to connect the battery power, but it's very expensive. So we need to do something how we can bring down this battery cost. The battery storage is, say, 5 kVA battery is around 5 million rupees right now. So that's very, very expensive. But that gives an opportunity for the companies who are in Sri Lanka or the foreign companies who are willing to come to Sri Lanka in investing in manufacturing, the batteries for the energy requirements. So, it's always like that. When you have challenges, it's always create, opportunities. So what I'm trying to say is, all this to put together, it is very, very important. We must have the national planning. Otherwise, we don't have proper regulatory factors to control the country's energy development. So that's very, very important. Because if we don't have that, so X and Y will do differently. But then it will not consolidate to the country's energy requirement. So I'm referring to this because I can see there are a lot of vacuums happening in everywhere. So people are not sure about how, even if they wanted to come for the investment in the country, whether they are in a better platform or whether they will get the adequate return on capital investment. So it is necessary, we have to have this national planning and also good governance, and also especially on the energy sector, the regulatory factors. not only on the oil part, but also in the solar power, or wind power, or for that matter, hydrogen power, or something like that. So there should be some policy makers, and if we don't have that knowledge, we may have to get the foreign knowledge into our country, because already it is happening in the rest of the world. So this is something that I wanted to say, and I will stop from there because we are left with only a few minutes, and probably she wanted to take a few questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Susantha. Yes, I do. So Denver, that's a very popular question. I think you touched on it, but they want it to be more specific. It says, will data intelligence become the decisive factor that determines which companies successfully transition in the climate era and which fail?
Short answer is yes. I was discussing about being digital native or AI native. And that's going to be the speed and scale at which businesses and companies can adopt and keep pace with the ever-growing demands for competitiveness. And that comes at a price, and that's why I said digital is energy. So if you don't get your energy platform in order, doing digital becomes a non-starter. So whilst we look at digital platforms and multiple other things, energy is going to be the new gold that we've got to really invest in. And I think from an important point of view is climate action has to be economic action. These two have to be connected at the treasury level. And that has to be done. And I always advocate what I call the 7 Ps principle. It's public-private partnerships with a purpose and passion for people and planet. And with that, I would like to end that.
Thank you, Denver. Dr. Ananda, there's an interesting question. It says, would you agree that without sustainable solutions to climate risk in the neighboring Indian subcontinent, measures made in Sri Lanka and smaller nations around are of less value?
I'm not too sure whether I got the question.
I'll repeat that. It says, would you agree that without sustainable solutions to climate risk in the neighboring Indian subcontinent nations, concerted measures made in Sri Lanka and smaller nations would be of less value?
Well, I think if you put it other way around, these solutions needs to be done regionally and globally. Now, for example, now these days I am involved in developing a regional energy transition program for South Asia. We're trying to take global experience from different places and Southeast Asia experience into the continent. What we are realizing is that it has to be thought as a region, and also with the mind that the global domain is also on the backdrop, because the information exchange, the technology exchanges and all that matters a lot. So Sri Lanka has an advantage of leading the way on number of things. Now say Nepal, Bhutan, their power generation and selling capacity is seasonal. But if you look at Sri Lanka, we can create situations that we are not seasonal. We can generate and put out a renewable energy supply in a different way. And Sri Lankan energy efficiency programs are world class. Even city of Seattle copied some of the Sri Lankan demand side management experiences. So there are green buildings is coming up. So these are the things that we can capitalize and we can propagate to the region, and that way I think it will work. But still we need to think as a region, and then only we will be more competitive in the global marketplace for our products, and ensuring that our energy costs are down, because our main vulnerability is the energy cost. I think then best practices transfer need to happen regionally, otherwise we'll have, because air pollution, water pollution don't have boundaries. So we need to approach like that. I remember There was a program I was involved called US Asia Environmental Partnership that was regional. We have 11 officers in Asia, and that we handled the air quality problems, and the vehicle emission testing program in Sri Lanka is one of them, and then the wind map and all that. So those brought in a lot of ideas, people together. There were bus gamanu, three-wheeler Dharmasekara, Transport Secretary, Motor Traffic Commissioner in the same airplane. And that's how the low sulfur diesel came to Sri Lanka. Went to Bangkok, then the bus gamanu said, "Api dannawa දැන් මොකද වෙන්නේ මේ the bus comes from the harbour to the Grand Pass shed, no smoke. From the Grand Pass shed goes smoke." Went to the minister immediately. For 50 cents US dollars, you were getting the dirtiest diesel. So that was the transition. I think it happened in 2003 or something. I think I'll stop there because we're running out. Thanks.
I think we've run out of time, so thank you, gentlemen, for the engaging conversation. And sorry to the audience, I wasn't able to get through all your questions, but only some of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tamani and the panel. If I could ask you please to stay on stage for a moment, and I would like to invite Ms. Neela Marika to give away the tokens of appreciation for our panelists.